Actually, the bad news for you all is I can stick around a while and answer some questions, and the really tough ones I'll turn to Tom to answer. So I'm delighted. Do we have do we have staff in the audience with microphones to hand out? Yes, we do. So how about up in the gallery up there? Anybody up top have a question? On anything. It doesn't have to be what we spoke to. All right. Anybody have any questions? There you go. Over here, we got two over here. Anybody on this side with a mic? And if not, I'll walk down and give you mine. Hey man, how are you?
So thank you for coming out. My name is Eliseo de Leon. I'm a research assistant and PhD student in the Material Science and Engineering Department here at Iowa State. My research is funded by NASA, and it's funded through the Iowa Space Grant. The focus of my research is developing structural capacitors for aerospace and military applications. So my question is, how does the Obama administration propose to bring scientific and engineering, space exploration, jobs, and sustainable research funding back to this country?
The way we're going to do that is we take a look at our NASA budget. There's a lot of criticism about any manned space flights. Well, the fact of the matter is, we share some in common. Both our sons served some heritage tours in Iraq. What we've done is we have reprogrammed that money back into some basic research and funding programs like yours. Funding will not diminish, it is increasing in the areas of new research and development and not all going into the manned program right now. And that's causing some dislocations, but that's also generating entire new waves of research, development, investment, and opportunity. Because look, folks, the bottom line is, unless you invest not only in applied, but pure research, the breakthroughs that we need to make to own the 21st century are not going to happen. And they require funding multiple sources. Not only companies, which we're doing with a number of the labs we have nationwide, the federal labs, but also funding universities and encouraging private enterprise to increase their funding. That's why we believe it's so important, and I don't get why the other team doesn't get it, why we don't make permanent the tax cut for research and development so businesses can plan to engage in this research. Let me put it this way. Science is back at the White House, and it ain't going away. Hold it close to your mouth.
Mr. Vice President, my name is Caitlin Hefty, and I am majoring in athletic training, and I'm a senior from Laverne, Iowa. My question for you is, out of all the universities across the United States, why you decided to come and speak at Iowa State?
Tom Vilsack, number one, and also because you have one heck of a program here. You have one heck of a program where you're marrying manufacturing, technology, agriculture, and also engaging businesses in the region to develop new technologies. And you have a record. I was talking to the dean. Every kid, not every, a significant number of the graduates out of the engineering department are going straight into good paying jobs and straight into industry. That's what we're looking to develop. Look, the bottom line of all of this is not just about being number one in the world. It's about making sure that you guys can have the same dreams, aspirations, and the prospects and possibilities that my generation had. For the first time, and I think over 35 years, there was a poll taken about a year ago saying that most parents didn't think their kids would be able to do as well as they did. That is debilitating in a country. Just the thought is debilitating. Pessimism feeds on pessimism. And this is all about reestablishing the single greatest chore. Look, the president and I are not going to measure whether or not we have succeeded economically based upon whether our GDP in the next 4 years is averaging 6% or whether or not the stock market goes through 15,000. They're not the indicia of success. The indicia of success for us are there enough good, not jobs, good paying jobs that people can live an existence where they can own their home in a decent neighborhood, where, like I said, they can send their kids to a good school, where they have the middle class is more than, it's not a number. It's not $50,000 or $50,212, the median income. You talk to the economists, they'll tell you those numbers. It's not that. It's a value system as well. And it's the single most defining feature of what makes this country great. Maybe it's because we are a country of immigrants. But that's the thing. Once you pull that ladder down, once you say to a whole group of people, lower your sights, diminish your expectations, you diminish the horizons for a country. The bottom line is, our definition of success is when a parent's able to turn to the kid and say, honey, it's going to be okay. I know that sounds simple, but that's how my dad measured it. Whatever it is, it's going to be okay. Go to your old neighborhoods. For people who aren't as successful as you were, ask them whether they're absolutely confident they could turn to their child now and say, honey, it's going to be okay. It's coming back. But for the longest time, it was missing. And by the way, I thought you were going to ask me why I didn't make All-American. In your athletic training, because I didn't have someone like you helping me out. That's the reason. I could have been big, man. I tell you what. I was a hell of a high school athlete and not a bad college athlete, but Jeff, we didn't have any trainers like you when I was around. You know what I mean? With your knowledge, or I imagine by the way you asked that question, you are able to strike the fear of God in people when you want them to do something, right? I wish you the best of luck, kiddo. Secret Service hates me doing this, but pass this back, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Amanda Bush. I'm a junior here at Iowa State University, majoring in accounting. I have to raise this question for my family and because you were introduced as a faith-based man. I have it written down. I'm really sorry. President Obama was quoted in a commencement address at the University of Notre Dame saying, "Let's honor the conscience of those who disagree with abortion and draft a sensible conscience clause and make sure that all of our health care policies are grounded not only in sound science, but also in clear ethics." Mr. Vice President, then why did he disregard this statement in the HHS mandate, forcing all faith-based agencies and employers to provide contraceptives through their medical insurance for the very thing that violates their conscience? I believe this mandate violates the most basic civil liberties and contradicts the very thing that the President believed to be true. Do you agree?
No, but let me explain. When I was in the Congress, I was one of the guys with the co-author of the Religious Freedom Act. I do believe and have believed, and I was the one that was tasked to meet with the National Conference of Bishops and others, and Cardinal Dolan, to talk about this. The fact of the matter is, the ultimate resolution of this problem is where it should have been in the first place, which was that we had not narrowed what they call the conscience clause to the phrase used to the steeple, meaning that the conscience clause some wanted to apply only to an actual church and the employees of that church that in fact were employed in the practice of that religion within that church, not extended to, for example, Catholic hospitals. The end result was finally turned out, which should have been what we tried to do in the first place. No Catholic or religious institution running a large institution like that is not directly related to the functioning of the church, the steeple, but like hospitals and universities, none will have to pay a single solitary penny for reproductive services. Not a single penny. The conscience clause is being honored in its literal sense. What is happening now is that we have been able to provide what was hard to set up, it got screwed up in the first iteration, is that any hospital, no matter where it is, no matter who runs it, profit or nonprofit, religious-based or otherwise, has to provide insurance to their employees like everybody else does in the country, or pay a penalty for not providing insurance for employees. That comes out of the Affordable Health Care Act. That will still pertain. But the insurance companies, because, quite frankly, it's cheaper for them, they will provide, not the institution, separate and apart from the policy that the Catholic Hospital, for example, provides to their nurses, doctors, janitors, technicians, etc. The insurance companies will provide for anyone who figuratively raises their hand and said, I also want coverage for contraceptive care. It will be automatically provided. That has been worked out and negotiated, and there's a simple reason for it. They said, well, now, some of you, and by the way, I liked Ronald Reagan. I knew him well, and he was a hell of a guy. I see your sweater there. It looks better on you than it would on me, too, but look, the problem is that it's real simple here, is that we're in a position that no matter what how anybody tries to make it, that the vast majority of American women are entitled to access to contraception if they choose. And we believe they should not be denied that access, and that every insurance policy should have that coverage if a woman wants that coverage. So we've done both. We've guaranteed that women who cannot afford contraceptive coverage, which is expensive on a monthly basis, will now have it in any policy provided, and that no religious institution will have to pay if it violates their conscience for that coverage. Okay. How about the young woman in the white blouse or shirt back there? Hey, my guys, you ought to kind of spread out here. Why don't you stand up so they can see you? There you go. Thanks. If you have hard questions, ask Tom, will you?
Hi, my name is Christina Lord. I'm actually a PhD student here in the Material Science and Engineering Department also. I had a question over the summer. It was just something that arose to me after I had been watching the ads on television, asking for donations to Somalia, to help people in Somalia. And so what I was wondering was, why is it that they're still having issues? I remember seeing, when I was a young kid on television, you see people from Africa, different countries in Africa. You see little babies, big stomachs because, they're malnourished and so forth. And I wondered, why is it that this issue is still happening? And America, the government, not only the government, but also religious institutions and other private institutions have been donating money. People all around America have been donating money. And I started to think about, for instance, the big issue in Somalia was drought. At that time over the summer, people had no access to clean water. And so, for instance, they were not able to, their crops were not able to produce anything. And not only that, they themselves were dying of thirst and so forth, and then also starvation. And so,
if you don't mind, what's your question?
Oh, sorry about that. So the question is, the question I had asked was, how is it that we're spending all this money out there, but we're not looking into innovation and teaching Somalians and so forth how to build their own agriculture, how to use the water properly, to grow their own plants and so forth, and take care.
I'll answer your question.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay? Look, first of all, the premise is mistaken that we're not investing and that we had not had great success. We have a food security program, a worldwide program this president has initiated in conjunction with a lot of NGOs and the UN. By the way, my son is the chairman of the World Food Program arm that's in the United States of America, the single biggest, non-paid. It's a private practice. He has a law firm, but he does this voluntarily and travels around the world and into Somalia, actually into Ethiopia and into Kenya, et cetera. But here's the problem. There's two. I'm going to ask, Tom will answer the last part. The first part of the problem is that there is overwhelming political dislocation in those areas. You have El Shabaab, a group of some characterize them as terrorists, but a group of extremists who have in fact cut off aid that the world is prepared to deliver into Somalia to save all those people. My wife recently went this summer over to one of the camps, and you may have seen it on television, one of the camps on the Somali border where there were women with their children walking 20, 25, 30, 35 miles with nothing. The one woman she was sitting with, and when she was talking to her, she said, "This is my daughter. I had to choose. I could carry my daughter, but I had to leave my son. I left my son to die 40 miles back." They're the kind of choices being made because of, just like in Darfur, the Janjaweed and what they were doing in Darfur and visiting those camps. So part of it is the absolute political instability that exists in certain parts of the world, and unfortunately a single significant portion concentrated in Africa, and the pure brutality of it. Because what it's all about is it's like, you know, range wars for water in the extreme, Now, what we have done, and now I'm going to turn it over to Tom.
Mr. Vice President, the Obama administration decided to change the focus of food assistance to countries. In the past, we basically provided humanitarian relief, but that's not enough. We actually have to encourage people to be productive themselves, to solve the problem themselves. So we have the Feed the Future initiative, which Secretary Clinton and myself and Administrator Raj Shah of USAID are basically partners. And essentially what we're doing at USDA is we're actually going to these countries. We're sending USDA officials to visit with farmers in those countries and teaching them better technologies. Iowa State has a seed center, which is also helping and assisting in creating the kinds of proper techniques and technologies to be used. Last year, we impacted 60,000 producers in sub-Saharan Africa, in Central America, and Southeast Asia. A relatively small number of people, but we impacted 60,000 producers. The second problem is the necessity of having political reform and agricultural reform, creating markets, and we're helping them with that. And finally, working to make sure that they have statistics, that they have an understanding of where their agriculture is. The sad reality is that roughly 40% of the food that's produced in those countries that you're concerned about is lost because these folks don't have adequate storage operations. So we're working on post-harvest loss and storage. So that work is being done, and we've made some progress, and we're going to continue to commit ourselves to Feed the Future.
Let me add one more point, because we could talk a lot about this, and it's worth talking about. Ethiopia had the same drought without the starvation. Same drought. No different impact. You know why? We, under our Department of Agriculture and USAID, in the past 2 decades, have taught them how to farm drought-resistant crops that have high protein content, that have high caloric content. So the same, you cross the border, this is the border, one side Ethiopia, same exact farm, drought-stricken, and one on the Somali side. On this side, there was a government that accepted over the years our help and technology. When Tom says technology, he's not talking about, geopositioning of sprayers for, he's talking about very basic stuff. And so it relates to the nature of the government. Tom or I and my wife tried to get into Somalia. You can't without risking literally being shot dead. It's not like something you can do. So the two factors, we are very focused on it, and we believe, the President and I, that food security and water access are going to be two of the most critical elements of American foreign policy and international stability, because that's the stuff over which wars are fought. That's the stuff over which societies decompose. That's the stuff over which chaos occurs from its aftermath. And so it's a big part of our initiative. And if you give my staff your name or afterwards, I'll send you this whole thing on food security we're talking about, writ large. We'll try to answer yes or no if you can shorten the questions a little bit. Gentleman there.
Hi,
She won't trust you with the mic. I would.
Yeah.
She's instructed not to.
my name's Kevin Erickson. I teach special education over in Nevada, about 15 miles from here. My question pertains to the reauthorization of ESEA and No Child Left Behind, and because originally it's seen as punitive and trying to catch us, and in the same time, you're catching us, but you're also taking away our funding and our ability to try to do things new and different. How are you going to come back and help us do what we need to do in the classroom?
Fundamentally change the No Child Left Behind. If you notice, the president introduced a fundamental change in it. He got criticized now for fundamentally changing it, not making it, tied to the test, et cetera. So you'll see a significant change. My wife is the only second lady in history to ever have a full-time job as a professor. She teaches 15 credits a semester at a community college, and she has for the last, I don't know how many years. There is a great deal of change in the No Child Left Behind geometry, if you will, how it's going to play. And also what's happening is that we are pushing very hard for full funding of that. We're having trouble with our friends on the other team being willing to even consider funding it. Because if you notice in some of the rhetoric, and I'm being Buck, how should I say this? It's hard for me to be objective. Hard to be objective, okay? I got it right. I understand my language, okay? Because it's hard for any of you to conclude that I would say something that isn't partisan. So maybe I shouldn't say it. But anyway, we're having trouble getting it passed through the Congress. But there's big changes in it. You have a lot more flexibility in the legislation, and the denial of funding would be based on criteria that's fundamentally different than teaching to the test. We need more microphones next time. More handheld.
Good afternoon, Vice President Biden and Secretary Vilsack. It's a true pleasure to have you here. I'm Hillary Kletcher, a freshman in Biological Systems Engineering here at Iowa State University, and I'm from a corn and soybean farm in southwestern Minnesota, so thank you for your support of American agriculture. The reason I chose Iowa State and Biosystems Engineering is because I am truly concerned about the energy security of our country. I recently went to China and I learned about how they were actually flying jet planes with biodiesel, something that we haven't done yet. And so what do you think is the future of American biofuels?
Let me answer it quickly this way. If there is not a future for American biofuel, we are in serious, serious trouble. The core, the single most significant building block to our economic growth and dynamism is access to energy, renewable energy, and cheaper energy that isn't based on fossil fuels. That's the single most significant. If you could pick any one thing, snap your fingers. It would be tomorrow to have renewable energy cost no more a kilowatt than a gas-fired coal-fired plant. A coal-fired plant. That is, to vastly oversimplify it. You are going to see we've been pushing major initiatives that have not gotten very far. Some of them have, but not gotten very far because there is this ongoing debate as to whether or not investment in renewable energy is efficient. And here's the argument that goes, and you see the ads that come up on TV. And these aren't political. I mean, these are just ads from industry. You have a hard-working guy there, an African-American, Caucasian, Hispanic person, a middle-class person staying there. I can't believe what these guys are going to do. They're going to insist that we spend more money on solar energy and wind and all this other stuff. And that costs 14 cents a kilowatt. And I right now, that'll raise my energy bill. And so why are we doing this? Don't do this now. There's truth to the first half of that. It is more expensive. But the reason why it's so much more expensive, in large part, is it's nowhere near to scale. It's like the first computer you bought cost 10 times as much as the computer you buy now because of scale. The first iPhone is a heck of a lot more expensive than the last iPhone. Well, that's not true. But that's close to true. When I said iPhone, I shouldn't have said iPhone. But you understand what I'm saying? So we've got to get to a critical mass. We've got to get to a critical mass. And you know, what I get confused with these guys saying, well, you guys are anti-business. I say, you know, I kind of thought the proposition was you got to spend money to make money. I don't know many businesses that made money by not expanding. And so that's the problem. That's the problem. But we are not giving up. We are not giving up. And by the way, there's an awful lot of Republicans who agree with this. And there's some Democrats. By the way, this isn't just straight down party lines. There's coal state Democrats who don't want us doing this, and there are consuming state Republicans who think this is a good thing to do. But we got to break through. We got to break through. Otherwise, look, what I don't want to do, and I'll end with this, I don't want to go from importing foreign oil to importing renewable energy technology. I don't want to be there. The country that gets the greenest quickest is going to win the trophy. It's going to have the best jobs, the most vibrant economy, the greatest growth. That's where it's going to come. But you have to invest in the front end. And by the way, you're going to invest, there's going to be mistakes. Not every one of the new technologies is going to break through. That's why, for example, we think and still think, but we can't get it done, we think the investment that was made over at Siemens over there when they said, okay, look, if you go ahead and build a plant and you manufacture renewable energy, you have a renewable energy facility that you're manufacturing here, you get a 30% tax credit in order to do it. Come here. There's also another provision of the tax code, I think it's 167, that said, look, what we're going to do is, if you, in fact, you don't have to build a factory, but you invest in applying solar or renewable technology, you get another tax credit. And that's when things started to move. And then we had a change in the Congress, and that all got eliminated. We're not giving up on it. You got to provide incentives to do things which is the overwhelming interest of the country. And it will get to the point where critical mass is reached. And you will see prices decline significantly. And we'll be all better off for it. Ladies and gentlemen,
Mr. Vice
I can
President,
see Tom wanting to say something. I'll let him say, and then we'll close it up.
I have to say this. Otherwise, they'd never let me back in the USDA.
It's about Iowa.
No. It's about USDA, specifically on the biofuel issue. There is, in fact, our Navy is, in fact, using biofuel. There'll be a Pacific Theater exercise. They just purchased 435,000 gallons of biofuel to be used in the Pacific Theater in a 2-day exercise. They just signed an MOU with us. They want 50.
Tell them what MOU means.
Memorandum of Understanding with us and the Department of Energy. 50% of the fuel the Navy will use in the future will be biofuel. The commercial airline industry, United Airlines and several other commercial airlines are now using biodiesel in their planes. We have 5 research centers across the country that USDA is funding. We have 5 biorefineries. We just provided hundreds of millions of dollars of loan guarantees. They're going to use everything from municipal waste to agricultural waste to switchgrass to timber to crop residue to produce new advanced biofuels. We have farmers that are actually now being incented to produce these new feedstocks. So there's an enormous amount of work that's being done here. No one is going to beat us in this. And the last thing I'll say is, you all ought to be thankful that we have a biofuel industry, because right now we would be paying $1 a gallon more for our gas were it not for the biofuel industry that we have.
Ladies and gentlemen, am I in trouble? As you can tell, Tom and I would rather stay here than where we're going to go. But I want to thank you all for giving us this much time. And the fundamental message that I want to leave with you is, you know, believe, man, not in Barack Obama and Joe Biden, not in any one administration. Believe in this country. We are so poised to make breakthroughs across the board, political, economic, cultural breakthroughs this is, I envy your generation, man. You're going to see changes for the better that are going to make what happened to my generation look like we were standing still. We're on the cusp of so many fundamental breakthroughs. By the time you're my age, we will have cured cancer. We will have figured out how to isolate that cancer gene and kill only that. We will have figured out how to reconstruct entire human hands from using your own genes. You ought to, I wish everybody could be in these meetings with these brilliant scientists that I get to meet with and talk to. There's such incredible promise. So believe in this country. I'm not saying vote for whoever you want to vote for. But do not buy into, we have to lower our sights. We have to think differently. We have to think smaller. Don't do that. Don't do that. That has never, ever happened in this country before. And every single solitary time, the American people have had an even chance. Every single time, they've overcome whatever the problem was. The one most important thing that's required, though, is, you know, if you leave here, find the first 10 people you see, if you have time, and ask them to define what it means to be an American. I'll bet you get 10 totally different answers, except I bet every answer has contained in it the same word: fair. Fair. Americans think of themselves as fair. One thing Americans hate the most in the neighborhood I grew up in, and I suspect yours, is being played for a sucker. Look, folks, we've gotten through wars and great economic crisis because everybody was in the deal. Everybody was in the deal. And when everybody thinks everybody else is in the deal, they, figuratively speaking, they give it the office. We've asked a lot. The country's asked a lot of the American people the last 5 years. Those of you who have jobs, we've said, your companies have said with good reason, I'm sorry, but your wages are going to remain stagnant. You got to make that sacrifice until we can get up on our feet. People without jobs, we've told them the sacrifices they have to make. We've asked everybody to make a sacrifice. Business, industry, government has asked everybody to make sacrifices. There's only one part of the economy that hasn't made any sacrifices. I come from a very wealthy state, Delaware. And I'm often fond of saying that very, very wealthy people are just as patriotic as poor people. And they are. But not much has been asked of them. One of the reasons why we talk about tax fairness is not because it will end the deficit, not because it will allow us to invest in anything we want to invest in, but simply so everybody looks around and says everybody's in the deal. When everybody's in the deal, everybody is ready to put their shoulder to the grindstone and push. When they think one segment of society is out of the deal, it's not class warfare. It's just about simple fairness. You know, when we had a 0.5% tax on the first dollar after the first million you make to put back to work 400,000 school teachers have been laid off, and cops and firefighters. It was interesting to the polling said. 70% of the American people in America who made more than $1 million a year supported it. It would have meant $500 a year more in their taxes if you made $1,100,000. Everybody supported it. It wasn't about solving the deficit. It was about getting something done that needed to be done that was more important than continuing a particular tax cut. So folks, ultimately, everybody has to be convinced that it's a fair deal. It's pretty basic stuff. I think that's where the American public's going. I think going in that way in both parties. A vast majority of Republicans agreed with that. A majority of millionaires agreed with that. An overwhelming number of independents and Democrats agreed with it. It's about time we get our government functioning in a little different way than it has been. Again, thank you very much for listening. It was an honor to be with you, and it's an honor to be with the governor, former governor of the great state of Iowa. Thank you all very much, and thank you, girls, for being so nice. What's your name? And what is your name?